Good day everyone. The topic that we're going to discuss is about social responsibility towards the environment. These are all the reporters. Ako si Angeline Manaog, Mary Ann Mausig, Krika, Maricris, Renemy, Maria Tensi, and Gurley. Once again, I am Abby Catherine Lorica and I'm going to discuss the Solar Petron oil spill of Guimaras, year 2006, Mark Copper mining disaster, year 1996, and to know if there's an ethical issue between the two. 2006 Solar Petron oil spill off Guimaras. August 11, 2006, date of empty Solar 1 Petron oil spill off Guimaras. 2.1 million liters oil spill caused by bad weather, human error, tanker overloading, and ship's captain was not qualified to sail the vessel. On August 11, 2006, the oil tanker MT Solar 1, hired by Petron Corporation, sank off the coast of Guimaras, spilling more than 2.1 million liters, about 555,000 gallons, of bunker fuel. It considered the biggest environmental disaster to hit the Philippines' coastal and marine resources. Several causes have been cited, including bad weather and human error. Allegations have been made stating that the tanker only had a huge capacity of liters, implying the possibility of overloading. Other investigations have claimed that the ship's captain was not qualified to sail the vessel. Affected at least 40,000 people depend on fishing. 500 hectares of mangroves and 60 hectares of seaweed plantations in three towns of Guimaras Island. 1,143 hectares marine reserve on Tacloban Islands covered with oil. During low tide, mangroves in marine sanctuary are covered with thick sludge, 60 centimeter high, and some sea creatures lie dead in the muck. Marine reserve is a fragile ecosystem, and the death of the mangroves and corals also means the loss of rich fishing ground. As expected, the irreversible situation affects the livelihood of many residents of Guimaras. The oil spill has affected at least 40,000 people who largely depend on fishing. 500 hectares of mangroves and 60 hectares of seaweed plantations in three towns of Guimaras Island. 1,143-hectare marine reserve on Tacloban Island, a breeding ground for more than 100 species of fish, has some of the most diverse flora, fauna, and fauna in the country, which is now covered with oil. During low tide, mangroves in the marine sanctuary are covered with thick sludge about 60 meters high, and some sea creatures such as coral, snakes, and small crabs lie dead in the muck. The marine reserve is a fragile ecosystem, and the death of the mangroves and corals also means the loss of the rich fishing ground. As expected, the irreversible situation affects the livelihood of many residents of Guimaras. It means that the oil that contaminated the water was not only devastating for the environment but also for the people and the economy of Guimaras. After 13 years, Guimaras once again boasts pristine beaches with white sand, and fisher folks have returned to harvesting the abundance of the waters. Next, 1996 Mar copper mining disaster. Owned and operated by Placer Dome Incorporation, a Canadian firm, the Marine Mining Corporation Marcopper was a multinational enterprise whose operations have been centralized in Marinduque for 25 years. It operated one of the largest copper mines in the country, and in 1995 alone earned a net profit of 80 million, the worst mining and environmental disaster in the Philippines. Mar Copper Mining Corporation explores, develops, and operates mining claims and produces copper, silver, and gold. The company local unit of Placer Dome Incorporation of Canada also operates a fishing fleet and produces canned tuna through its subsidiary Fishing Company Incorporation. In 1995, earned a net profit of 80 million. About 25 years of service before the incidents happened, it was declared as the worst mining and environmental disaster in the Philippines. This disaster at the Marcopper mines of Marinduque made headlines around the world. On March 24, 1996, residents along the Bowac River noticed dead fishes along the river and dead animals on the banks. They were afraid because the water on the river thickened, then quickly returned to grayish mud, which threatened to pollute the water being used by 20 barangays along the river. In the following days, the toxic flood flowed towards the sea, foreshadowing the death of the river, affecting families in barangays of Hinapulan and Binunga. Bowac River was dead. On March 24, 1996, the drainage tunnel of Mark Copper Mining Corporation's open pit ruptured and spilled 23 millions of tons of mine waste that smothered the Bowac River in Marinduque, inundating villages and killing marine life. It caused flash floods that buried villages. About a third or 20 out of 60 villages had to be evacuated with approximately 20,000 people affected. Nearby villages lost one of their major sources of livelihood. Barangay Binunga and Hinapulan was buried under 6 feet of muddy flood water, causing 400 families to flee to higher grounds. Sources of drinking water were contaminated with toxins. Fish, freshwater, shrimps, and figs were killed outright. Helicopter had to fly in food, water, and medical supplies to the isolated villages. As the agricultural and marine life got severely affected, the government declared Bowac River was dead. Health impact. Because of the toxic spill, 2 out of 3 persons were found positive for subhemoglobinemia. Anemia and neurologic manifestations were detected in 4 out of 6 persons that suggests chronic exposure to toxic materials. To date, residents in the worst hit areas are complaining that toxic waste has caused physical deformities in newborn babies. After the 2-person ate fish from Bowac River, they are diagnosed positive for sulhemoglobinemia, a sick not normally found in the human blood. The pigment in greenish derivative of hemoglobin which cannot convert it back to normal, functional hemoglobin. It causes cyanosis even at low blood level. 4 out of 6 persons diagnosed for anemia and neurologic manifestations. Anemia is a condition in which lack enough healthy red blood cells to carry adequate oxygen to your body's tissues. Having anemia, also referred to as low hemoglobin, can make you feel tired and weak. Cause of anemia is a low levels of iron in the body, while neurological manifestations include but are not limited to headache, impaired consciousness, stroke seizures, meningitis, and aseptialitis. It also affected the physical deformities of the newborn babies. Because of the situation, eventually the company closed and the mining operation stopped. The Mark Copper mining disaster led to significantly change the government's mining policies. The disaster prompted government to revise the rules of the Mining Act to focus more on the protection of the environment and address social issues. Now we're going to know if there is an ethical issue between the two. Mining itself or extracting minerals from the womb of the earth is not unethical, and oil business and mining industries are an important part of the economic whole. Oil and mining business is unethical because it pollutes the environment and destroys the first layer of the earth's surface. But it gives a huge importance in the economy, such as tax revenues, high wages, significant purchases of high-value plant and materials. Other good things are technological and productivity gains that help not only the mining industry but are also transforming other sectors. There must have been a moral contradictions going on in the minds of the mining executive long before the disaster occurred. The values of integrity, respect for their community, the environment, and the future of the people of Marinduque. Can we say that all of this seemed to have been sacrificed of all the altar of the goddess profit? Is this a correct statement? Before the disaster occurred, the mining executive must apply a moral contradictions or predict it to happen. From that situation, no one has been affected. The business must always keep in mind that values of integrity, respect, or protection for the community and the future of the people is the most important, aside from the gaining profit, so that it can boost employee morally in the workplace and lead to greater productivity. Solar Petron Exxon Valdez and Marcopper cases are no longer hitting the headlines, but these accidents have delivered a strong message to the business and government regulators. The neglect of corporate social responsibility can generate more harm to the already suffering residents of the planet Earth and the already abused ecology, and that the damage is in fact irreparable. Neglect of CSR or corporate social responsibility can generate more harm to the already suffering residents of the planet Earth and the already abused ecology. The damage is irreparable. From the situation occurred, business and government had to change the law and regulations, making it more focused on the protections of the environment and address social issues. The green CSR can reduce business risk, improve reputation, and provide opportunities for the cost saving. That's all, thank you. So the continuation of our topic will be discussed by the next reporter, Angeli Manaog.
For the benefit of the doubt, we can assume that Mark Copper attempted to adhere to the Philippine environmental laws. Were they aware, however, that the Philippine laws were very low in standard in comparison with the environmental and safety laws of Canada, where, where the parent corporation resides? Did the management of Mark Copper have any social responsibility to do more than what the local laws have required to ensure safety? Mark Copper was found to have violated several conditions of its Environmental Compliance Certificate, or ECC. These conditions included dumping mine tailings in the Taipan pit only until it could comply with the recommendation of the Environmental Management Bureau to install a submarine disposal system. Mark Copper also was supposed to ensure that no runoff or silt should reach Mogbog or Bobok rivers. And if this happened, to take immediate step to repair the damage. Apparently, nothing was done when silt reached the rivers. The 1996 United Nations mission to the Marinduque mining disaster discovered unpleasant truth that the mother company of Mark Copper, the Placer Dome Incorporation of Canada, did not give high priority to environmental management of Mark Copper mining. That is a remiss act on the part of the multinational corporation, which means a neglect on its social responsibility towards the environment as stakeholder. So for over 30 years, the Mark Copper Mining Corporation has been operating on Marinduque Island in the Philippines. The mine operation there have caused innumerable troubles. Serious health and environmental problems have placed the community at risk. The island of Marinduque is a very poor area and relies heavily on agriculture and fishing. Mining in the area has polluted waterways, killed fish, and flooded agricultural fields. One resident observed over the years our lifeline this brook used for everything from drinking to washing down buffalo had been shrinking. So according yun sa residente doon. Not only was the supply of water shrinking but was contaminated. People will be People were being poisoned indirectly through the fish and water, but also workers were dying from direct contact with the mining operation. One man who worked 10 years as a driver for Mark Copper died at the young age of 39 due to lung cancer. Doctors reported it was caused by the red dust he encountered at work every day. His terminal illness was compensated by a month of wages. So yun nga, grabe yung yung Mark Copper mining, hindi siya healthy sa environment ng Marinduque. Maraming naapektuhan. So despite this negative, Mark Copper employs about 1,000 people, mostly from the island. The corporation also provides 30 million a year for local goods and services, as well as the electricity for the province. Still, This island remains one of the poorest part of the country. The government of the Philippines support multinational corporation and actively seeks to bring their investments like mining into the country. Things like the Mining Act of 1985, which allows a mining company to own 100% equity and the lax environmental regulations, are in existence to attract companies. Marinduque has tried to get their voices heard, but their claims against Mar Copper are largely ignored. So, yung mga tao nga sa Marinduque, nagrereklamo na sila kasi nga hindi na nga maganda yung impact ng Mar Copper na sa sa health nila. Pero hindi yun pinansin, inignore lang yung yung hinaing nila. So the struggle between development and the environmental is apparent here and is a problem being faced more and more frequently in developing nations. The 1996 accident became known as the Mar Copper mining disaster. It brought national and international attention to Marinduque. Experts and scientists poured into the island province to study the disaster and eventually learned of the problems that had been occurring for years. Because of the support coming in from outside the community, the people had more power to mobilize. They then came to face a new struggle. How do they recover from the years of damage, and should they stop Mar Copper from mining in Marinduque in the future? Mar Copper is the largest employer on the island of Marinduque and created most of the infrastructure on island. The company also mines produce 20% of the country's copper supply. A guided tour around the mine site can be taken. The site has facilities like swimming pools, bowling lanes, basketball, tennis courts, and an 18-hole golf course. After the spill, Mar Copper took no responsibility and did not participate in clean-up efforts. The corporation is currently entering bankruptcy. Private business is socially responsible for the environment. When we speak of the business general obligations towards the environment, we cannot disregard three considerations, namely, the fact that business establishment cannot use with impunity the different categories of creatures and resources, whether living or inanimate, animals, plants, and the natural elements, simply as they want. Number two, business must realize that natural resources are limited. As it has already been proven on a number of occasions, most of our natural resources are not renewable. To exploit them with absolute dominion and consistent stubbornness, as if they were inexhaustible, seriously endangers their availability not only for the present generation, but for generations to come. Number three, finally, business must comprehend the evil effects of certain types of industrial development on the quality of life. We all know that the direct or indirect result of industrialization is the pollution of the environment, with serious consequences for the health and safety of the population. Business cannot use and abuse the elements of nature simply as they desire, that they are equally obligated to work hard for the renewability of resources after using them. No one today should fail to understand that the possible consequences of haphazard and to understand and irresponsible exploitation of nature is irreversibly damaging for all humans and non-humans. Economic development indeed has an ethical dimension. When business treats the beautiful garden created by God merely as a source, then it becomes an abandoned and lifeless desert in due time. So all businesses have basic ethical and legal responsibilities. However, the most successful businesses establish a strong foundation of corporate citizenship, showing a commitment to ethical behavior by creating a balance between the needs of shareholders and the needs of the community and the environment in the surrounding area. These practices helps bring in consumers and establish brand and company loyalty. In order for a company to be socially responsible, it first needs to be responsible for itself and its shareholders. Companies that adopt CSR programs have grown their business to the point where they can give back to society. Thus, CSR is primarily a strategy of large corporations. Also, the more visible and successful a corporation is, the more responsibility it has to set standards of ethical behavior for its peers, competition, and industry. Evolution of ethical management vis-a-vis the environment. Era of sustainable development. Whole system thinking towards zero waste industrial ecology. Era of sustainable development is about meeting the diverse need of different communities to create a better quality of life and future for all. So what are some examples of sustainable development? First is wind energy and solar energy, crop rotation, water efficient fixtures, and green spaces. So, era of beyond compliance, eco-efficiency, win-win approach. So, era of beyond compliance, win-win is a situation game negotiation or strategy in which all the parties benefit one way or another. There are no losers. In a conflict situation, when the participants are trying to work out a resolution, a win-win strategy is one in which everybody is accommodated. All participants come out winning. Era of public accountability. Business takes initiative to improve because the public expects it. Era of compliance, obey the law and government regulations. That's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Ann A. Mausik, and I will be discuss the continuation of the report of Miss Angeli Manaog in Group 4. My report is all about what are the concrete duties of the private business to the environment. By invoking the working principles of sustainable development, stewardship, solidarity, participation, and social justice, it might be well to enumerate three duties of business, namely, the duty to conserve the natural resources, the duty to install pollution control devices, and the duty to compensate those affected. The first one is conservation, the second is prevention, and the third is compensation. Kemp, Parto, and Gibson. Sa pamamagitan ng paggamit ng working principles of sustainable development, stewardship, solidarity, participation, and social justice, ito ay mayroon natural resources. Tungkulin pangalagaan ang likas na yaman, the duty to install pollution control, tungkulin mag-install ng pang-control sa pollution, and the duty to compensate those affected, tungkulin bayaran ang mga apektado. Ang una ay conservation o konserbasyon, ang pangalawa ay prevention o pagkaiwas, ang pangatlo ay compensation o kabayaran. So next is conservation, the duty to conserve all natural resources and preserve all endangered species. It is the social duty of business to protect all natural resources for future generations who have an equal right to the limited goods and assets of children. Children a world that is not worse condition than the one we receive from our forefathers. But how do we do this? Ito yung social duty of business na protektahan ang likas na yaman para sa mga susunod na future generation na may pantay na karapatan sa limitadong mga kalakal at ari-arian ng mga anak na natatanggap mula sa kanilang mga ninuno. So next is by adopting voluntary measures to preserve our wildlife and endangered species. Sa pamamagitan ng pagpapatibay ng mga voluntary measures para mapangalagaan ang ating wildlife at mga endangered species. So next is by taking positive steps to ensure that consumption of fossil fuels and or minerals is regulated. Sa pamagitan ng pagsasagawa ng mga positibong hakbang upang matiyak ang pagkonsumo ng mga fossil fuel at pagkontrol ng mga minerals. So last is by searching for some kind of substitutes for materials of the earth which are depleted too rapidly. Sa pamamagitan ng paghahanap ng ilang uri pamalit sa mga materials and elements sa earth na masyadong mabilis na nauubos. So next is those prevention include the duty to install pollution control devices. The Clear Air Act of many countries should put an absolute stop to all kinds of industrial pollution. The second best is for the polluting agent to stop pollution at its very root by installing pollution control devices. The installation of these devices can help lessen, if not avoid, the catastrophic effects of supercontamination of our air and water. Better still is to design processes and use materials that do not produce pollution. Ang Clear Air Act ng maraming bansa ay dapat huminto sa lahat ng uri ng industrial pollution. Ang pangalawang pinakamahusay para sa polluting agent na ihinto ang pollution at sa pamamagitan ng pag-install ng mga pollution control device. Ito ay makatulong na bawasan kung hindi man may iwasan ang mga sakunan na epekto ng sobrang contamination ng ating hangin at tubig. Mas mabuti pa ay mag-design ng mga magagamit ng mga materials na hindi gumagawa ng pollution. A resolution like this can be done. Aside from implementing the required mitigating measures mandated by the ECC to alleviate the impacts caused by both the coal handling activities and operations of the plant, Mauban Quezon Power Plant's world-class emissions control has employed advanced electrostatic precipitators and scrubbers that eliminate particulate and acid gas emissions. These preventive measures was in place before the operation of the power plant in 1999. Ang isang resolution na tulad nito ay maaaring gawin bukod sa pagpapatupad ng mga kinakailangang mitigating measures na ipinag-uutos ng ECC, Environmental Compliance Certificate, para maibsan ang mga epekto tulad ng coal handling activities at operations ng mga planta sa Mauban, Quezon Power Plant's world-class emission ay gumagamit ng mga advanced na electrostatic precipitators at scrubbers na nag-aalis ng particulate at acid gas emissions. Ang mga hakbang sa pag-iwas na ito ay inilagay bago ang operations ng mga power plant noong 1999. Do some companies have strategic plans for the future? IBM and Johnson & Johnson are participating in the World Wildlife Fund (WWF) program to make greenhouse gas emissions reductions, which outside auditors can verify. Under WWF's Climate Savers program, Johnson & Johnson cuts its emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases by 7% between 2000 and 2010 by curbing emissions from 150 facilities in 50 countries. Ang IBM, International Business Machine, and Johnson & Johnson ay nakilahok sa programa ng World Wildlife Fund, WWF, para gumawa ng mga ng mga pagbawas sa mga greenhouse gas emissions na maaaring ma-verify ng mga auditor sa labas. Under WWF's Climate Savers Program, pinabawasan ng Johnson & Johnson ang mga emissions ng carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases ng 7% between 2000 and 2010 sa pamamagitan ng pagpigil ng mga emissions from 150 facilities in 50 countries. IBM cuts its emission by 4% a year in 30 manufacturing and assembling facilities in 14 countries. To help achieve their targets, both companies use the expertise of a non-profit research center to verify their levels of CO emissions. The aim is to prevent more pollution and negative environmental impact. Ang IBM cuts its emission by 4% a year in 30 manufacturing and assembling facilities in 14 countries. Upang makatulong na makamit ang kanilang mga target, ginagamit ng parehong company ang pag-expertise ng non-profit research center para ma-verify ang kanilang levels ng CO emissions. Ang layunin ay upang maiwasan ang mga maraming pollution at negatibong epekto sa kapaligiran. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Rika May N. Midana from BSPA HRDM3. So, I am the fourth reporter and I will discuss the continuation of the report of Ms. Mausig. What are the compensatory duties of business? It is just and fair as a CSR imperative that after a disaster, the polluting agent should make compensatory repayment to all those badly harmed. In the case of Mark Copper, it released about 40,000 from its environmental guarantee funds for the relief and rehabilitation of the residents and villagers along the Makulapnik and Boak rivers. It has also spent about 200,000 on mitigating the effects of the disaster, including the helicopter services to the affected barangays, rebuilding of damaged roads and footbridges. Finally, the company spent about 20,000 on food parcels and medical services to affected residents. So the community wants to be fairly compensated for the effects of mining. Also, it is just to set up a fund for future use to help the community with their needs. In the case of Mark Copper, the company is obligated to pay for the compensation of the damages since 1996 and establish a trust fund for health, environment, and etc. So the Mark Copper owns their mistakes and they are willing to pay for it. So the Mark Copper has the duty to compensate for the damages that has been done in Marinduque. The effect of the mining disaster is harmful and that it will not be easy to clean up. Thus, the payment should be measured since 1996. Besides, establishing a fund for the health and environment is one of the ways to help the community in Marinduque. So, the compensation for the damages is a step in improving the reputation of the Mark Copper. It is also means that the company acknowledges their mistakes and those they are doing something to owe up for it. The fund should be readily available to the affected communities so they can use it properly for the betterment of their lives. So, the compensatory rights and duties of the business of the company of Mark Copper Mining Corporation and the Placer Dome Incorporated should be responsible for the effect of mining and it's their duty to resolve the problems and one way of it is to pay for the compensation. Compensatory penalties comes out to be more expensive, hence making it obvious that an ounce of the prevention is indeed better than a pound of cure. Petron Philippines, Mark Copper, Philip Morris, Union Carbide India Limited or the UCIL, and Exxon Valdez have learned their lesson the hard way. So, the fund will be beneficial to the people because it will not only help the community but also it can be used in creating meaningful projects that can affect other people. Next, is environmental protection a community joint effort? In spite of all existing laws and protective being in place, people still ask why we are and our children in the 21st century inheriting heavily polluted rivers and waterways, denuded forests, depleted resources, and bleak future. What went wrong since 1977? The year when supposedly the EIS system was signed into law, where the public officials and government agents remiss in the strict implementation of the environmental protection laws. The revolution going on will change all that. Advocacy in behalf of Mother Earth is roaring and creating a lot of noise that government and the civil society will not fail to hear. Environmental protection is becoming a corporate led community joint effort. Because a sustainable development is a long term, many players put their hands on it and get involved. Proponents now include inputs from the government, representatives of the affected communities, local government units or the LGUs, non-government organization or NGOs, and the private sector, making sure that all stakeholders are made accountable. In his book, Which World? Scenarios for the 21st Century, Alan L. Hammond offers several scenarios for direction the world is headed from an every person for himself world to a more sustainable world where corporate innovators work cooperatively with activists, governments, and others to create economic, environmental, and social value. So it is environmental protection a community joint effort. Uh, Environmental protection is not the responsibility of just one entity. It is a unified effort. So the government must form rules and regulation and the citizens must abide by them. And the businesses also play a huge part in environmental protection and it is also their social responsibility. In order to have a sustainable business, we should first think about the sustainability of the world where we live into. From being a word for every person for himself, the idea heading is to sustainable world where the corporate innovators work cooperatively with activists, government, and others to create economic, environmental, and social value. So, environmental protection is a community joint effort. Why? Because human health is intimately tied to environmental conditions. Thus, we, the community, should be participate in protecting the environment since all of us are enriched by its resources and as well as affected by its downfall. So, advocacy in behalf of Mother Earth is roaring and creating a lot of noise that government and the civil society will not fail to hear. So, environmental protection is becoming a corporate-led community joint effort and it's everybody's business. So, that's all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ranimisi Mumpil from HR3. My topic is all about Environmental Management Accounting or EMA. So, Environmental Management Accounting or EMA can be defined as identification, collection, estimation, analysis, internal reporting, and use for environmental cost, savings, and revenues information for both conventional and environmental decision making in an organization. And also, environmental management accounting is designed for internal use of the business. However, cost information provided through EMA can also be utilized for external reporting purposes. UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs 2005. EMA also use of two types of information for internal decision making. The first one is physical information, the use of flows and rates, energy, water and materials including waste. And the second one is monitoring information and environmental related cost, earnings and savings. In addition, EMA addresses the management information needs of the managers for corporate activities that affect the environment, as well as environment-related impacts on the corporation. Depending on the type of organization, environmental impact could include production of fluent, recycling, water and power consumption, and carbon footprint. EMA has two legs of sustainability pyramid. The first one, profit economic outcomes. Second, environmental performance. Profit economic outcomes is the profit of producing goods and services while factoring the alternative use of the company resources. For example, explicit cost could be the market price of the company could sell natural resources for versus using that resources. A paper company owns a forest of the trees. Second is the environmental performance. Environmental performance, the effect of the business activities and product on the environment, such as resource consumption, waste generation, and emission. Why environmental performance is important? Environmental performance is important because it targets the cost savings and improved productivity of the business, such as raw materials, waste production, and energy use, can all be looked and closely identify savings, higher sales. Reporting environmental performance can have a positive impact of the sales of the business. EMA value of reports. EMA reports can be based of the external disclosure in case of company publish additional reports on the environmental and social performance. And also using the language of business, separate EMA reports allow the mainstreaming of environmental issues into business planning and decision-making process. As EMA clarifies the value of environmental protection activities for the entire organization. And also, EMA helps environmental managers and pollution control officers to present solid business cases for environmental-related improvement projects and activities. EMA reports can be the company-owned internally developed tool for continuous improvement, both profitability and environment. In addition to practice usage such as huge savings due to targeting improvements, and the help in the establishing a culture of waste and rest prevent. And lastly, based on the EMA 2005, EMA reports may become corporate HQ tool for performance evaluation, benchmarking, and decision-making purposes, and tool for shareholders communication. There are some best practice around the world. The first best practice idea came from Wilford and Frost 2006. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development came up with the first official listing of global corporation, the benchmark CSR towards the environment, in a book entitled Walking the Talk.
Good day everyone, I am Maria Tensi Ann Aina Erga from BSB HRDM3. I'm the next reporter for today. My topic is all about the Quezon Power Limited Company or QPL and San Miguel Corporation or SMC. The Quezon Power Limited Company is the owner-operator of a power plant based in Mauban, Quezon. It is the first build, own-operate power project in the Philippines and the first power project in the country undertaken without a sovereign guarantee. Through its Mauban-based power facility, Quezon Power contributes the nation building by providing stable, reliable, and competitively priced electricity to the Luzon grid. By enforcing strict environmental controls in the operations and delivering vital social services covering the areas of health, environment, education, livelihood, and infrastructure development, Quezon Power remains true to its commitment to environmental and community stewardship. Is the Quezon Power Limited Company or QPL a corporative citizen? 440 MW coal-fired power plant in Mauban in Quezon Province, the first privately owned power generation and transmission project operational in 1999. The international power industry for its support to community and for environmental excellence. The Quezon Power's materials deliberately isolate and protect indigenous reef structures, planted 70,000 trees, seedling and help reforest 33 hectares and at the plant site. QPL facility is the first bleed-owned operate power project in the Philippines. Also, the first one in the country to be financed without government guarantees in 2006. Long-term economic growth become imperative for business to promote environmental organization. The Quezon Power Limited Company or QPL owns and operates Quezon Power Plant, which is a 503 gross coal-fired power plant. 31-kilometer transmission line and certain related facilities in Quezon Province in the Republic of the Philippines. Quezon Power remains strongly committed to its vision of creating a positive impact on the lives of Maubans by delivering vital social services and providing much needed assistance where they are most needed by the most community. My next topic is San Miguel Corporation or SMC. And the type of business organization is San Miguel Corporation was originally founded in 1890 as a single brewery in the Philippines. The company has since transformed itself from a beverage, food and packaging businesses into a diversified conglomerate with businesses in fuel and oil, energy, infrastructure, and real estate industries. And what does San Miguel Corporation do? San Miguel Corporation is one of the largest and most diversified conglomerates in the Philippines, making your world better for over 130 years through beverage, food packaging, fuel and oil, power, and infrastructures. The question here is, how can San Miguel Corporation manage to practice sustainable development while improving the bottom line? San Miguel Corporation actively focusing on quality and efficiency improvements to increase its competitiveness. Reducing water consumption has been the source of large cost savings for San Miguel. The new system has also reduced the volume of sludge and fields for hauling it away. How does San Miguel Corporation sustain their business? Apart from investing in more circular businesses, models, and sustainable water and waste management systems, we make sure that our projects help spread the benefits of economic growth beyond our host communities. At first, it to enhance the value of its establishment, core businesses through operational excellence, brand enhancement, and improved product visibility. And the second one is the diversity into industries that underpin and development and growth of the Philippine economy. The Nese Cagayan de Oro City plant engaged in water resource protection to prevent coffee contamination of water resources. Implemented by the Environmental and Safety Department, Nestle Improvement Management Systems, or NEMS, NEMS. Translate the plant environmental trust into specific employee accountability, making environmental protection an integral staff function for all. As a company that's chosen to take on a larger role in the nation building, San Miguel or Nestle Cagayan de Oro City sees itself its most successful when it combines it need to profit with taking a major problems, effective, scalable, positive change, and significantly improving lives.
Good day everyone, I'm Girly Parinas and I'll be reporting about San Miguel Corporation and Unilever Philippines. So first, San Miguel Corporation. How does San Miguel Corporation communicate its message? As part of its commitment to profit with honor, San Miguel Corporation invests in many social development and environmental projects in the communities where it operates, in publishing information booklets on the environment every 2 years to inform its stockholders and other interested stakeholders of the company's work in this area. Highlighted activities of the company includes a clear air program that prohibits smoke belching vehicles from entering SMC compounds, reforesting watersheds that supply water to SMC facilities, and livelihood projects that involve local farmers in making recycled fertilizers from chicken wastes. Environment booklet features San Miguel Corporation's corporate policy on the environment. The policy pledges the company to, first, use environmentally friendly manufacturing processes, products, and packaging made from sustainable materials, develop innovative techniques to manage environmental issues related to its businesses, such as to reduce, reuse, recycle wastes. Support and implement programs that promote the sustainable use of resources, waste management, and pollution prevention, which will help eliminate waste at the source, saving natural resources and energy, and cutting costs. Meet or exceed environmental standards and become a role model in regulatory compliance to avoid unnecessary or unintentional negative impact on the environment. Share this policy with San Miguel Corporation stakeholders to influence their own environmental responsibility positively, to establish the business as ethical brand. So environmental responsibilities should be fulfilled while venturing for profits in the business. San Miguel Corporation's environmental logo was designed to maintain a high level of environmental awareness among the company's employees and stakeholders. Next is Unilever Philippines. What is Unilever Philippines doing? Unilever has sponsored the reforestation of 2.5 hectares of the La Mesa watershed as part of a project set up in 1999 by broadcasting company ABS-CBN. Metro Manila's 12 million residents rely on the 2,700-hectare La Mesa watershed for the daily water needs, but widespread deforestation due to uncontrolled migration as well as farming, quarrying, and timber harvesting have depleted its holding capacity. The La Mesa Reforestation Program aims to reforest 1,000 hectares and to convert part of the watershed into a nature reserve. Cleaning up the Pasig River. The Philippines' Pasig River is a critical 25-kilometer lifeline between Laguna and Manila Bay, and a source of livelihood for thousands of independent fishermen. In the early 1950s, the river provided clean water for homes, fish for the table, and irrigation for farms. pollution of the river peaked in 1996. Concerted and successful efforts have reduced pollution levels by a third. This is the result of a multi-project and multi-sector river rehabilitation programs launched in 1993. It has brought together national and local government agencies, non-government organizations, community groups, and professional and business groups. A 1991 study found that contributors to the pollution in the Pasig River consisted of 45% liquid industrial waste and 10% solid waste. Many industries are located along the river and families living beside it were particularly at risk. As an active member of the Manila business community, Unilever Philippines is taking part in the rehabilitation program. Its activities include a major waste management program at the local public market, One River, One Thought, One Action, an educational awareness campaign targeted at the public schools of Manila. Who Cares campaign appealing to consumers through merchandising materials to participate in the cleanup. The book Pasig River of Life has been published to highlight the waterway's grandeur. Part of the proceeds from sales were donated to the Sagip Pasig Movement, one of the organizations working to clean up the river. Unilever's factory, which lies on a small tributary of the Pasig River, has opened its own domestic wastewater treatment plant, a first in the industry and the area of Metro Manila. That's all. Thank you.